Hello, I'm Joseph Malazzi, creator of Dark Matter, and you are listening to Kneel Before Pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello, and welcome to part 2 of our Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. I'm your host Craig, and this is the conclusion of my discussion with Kat, Chris and Isaac about the Avengers as well as the wider Marvel Cinematic Universe. Since our discussion went to Infinity War and beyond, in more ways than one, it needed to be split into two. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, then please do check it out and you'll see exactly what I mean. So without further ado, we start with discussing the direct sequel to the Avengers, Avengers Age of Ultron. It does have a sequel, well it has plenty of sequels, it depends on what you define as a sequel, but it has a direct sequel called Age of Ultron. That's another Avengers film. How do you think it compares to the original? I think it's generally accepted it's not as good as the first one, and I would agree, although I still love it.
I do agree. It's not as good as the first one. Mostly because, while it does have a lot of moments that are great, like the Avengers party, and,
I could watch that for 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. I would watch that. I would watch, an entire four-hour film of that. Hell yes. But yeah, there's a lot less at stake somehow. Because the villain doesn't feel very personal to anyone, even though he is created by Tony Stark. It just, I don't know, we don't get enough time to connect with with his side of things. And again, they end up fighting gray, faceless multitudes in the form of robots this time, but, still gray, faceless multitudes. So it's like the Chitauri again,
yeah,
somehow, and it's not as satisfying, for sure.
It's the issue it has is it kind of follows some very similar beats, but without the sort of payoff factor that I think made the first so exciting. Is it's the first time seeing them all together and look at them all working out, and it's all brilliant. And then you go into the next one, you go, they're already together. Yeah, the novelty factor's kind of not there with it. It doesn't plaster over some of the cracks that you see. And like you say, it becomes faceless baddies towards the end. Just an unconquerable amount of baddies that appear towards the end. And it's, you know what the reason's there for, because they don't want them chopping down tons of humans that have decided that, that's why you sort of see a little bit of them fighting Hydra and stuff. But you don't get a lot of them taking on other people, because they don't want to do that. You can be as brutal and destroying robots as you like. It's a lot more difficult when you're then doing that to humans. So I think that's why they've made it sort of robot villains, and I'm guessing it's going to be along a similar line for the next one, be it faceless aliens or faceless robots or whatever that you're going to be fighting.
It's actually interesting that in the Avengers films, they're fighting the high budget Hydra. They're the guys with jetpacks and energy weapons, and then you look at Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and it's just a bunch of guys with guns, but they're all fighting Hydra, and it's just we live in this cheaper version of the universe over here, but those guys have all the money.
We've got street level Hydra, and we've got premium league Hydra over at the other side there. We'll leave the big ones to the Avengers, and we'll just deal with this. One
of my bugbears with Age of Ultron, and I had that bugbear the first time I watched it, is how much of Phase 2 it actually ignores. So the end of Iron Man 3, he's decided, I don't need to be Iron Man anymore, I'm complete, I'm fine. So he blows up all these suits. Beginning of Age of Ultron, he's wearing a suit again. And you've established he has real-time, across the world remote control in Age of Ultron, but he's in a suit again. In Iron Man 3, but in Age of Ultron he's in a suit again. Why isn't he across the world, just remotely piloting safely? Cap, he's been recruited, despite the fact that Winter Soldier ends with him running off to find Bucky. Banner is just kind of there, although he's in Iron Man 3, to be fair, in the post-credit scene. And who else? Black Widow was running off to figure out a new cover identity. And Thor. Oh yeah, Thor was not planning to go back to Earth at that point. At the end of... Oh no, he did go back to Earth at the end of Thor 2, didn't he? That shows how much I remember that film.
Yes, he did, yeah.
Yeah, but again, the implication was it's not to join the Avengers. So you've got this kind of missing bit of story about why are they back together?
Yeah.
It just starts off with them back together as if nothing happened.
No, it's, I mean, there's a throwaway line about, oh, like, we have to find the scepter. We've been hunting for Loki's scepter, and we know that it's here now, so we're here. So it's implied, I guess, that they've spent some time doing this.
Yeah. And at some point, Stark or whoever would have went and got them all back together. But I think it works as actually a direct sequel for the first Avengers film, because the end of the first Avengers film shows Stark playing with the tower. You know, he's building rooms for everyone to train in and things like that, or planning rooms for everyone to train in. And then the next time you see them, they're all together. So if you just ignore Phase 2, then you have two films that slot together almost directly.
Yeah.
I mean, they make references to some of the stuff that happens, but other than that, you know, it's the implication is the end of the Avengers, Stark makes the Avengers, and then by the time you get to Age of Ultron, they're already made.
But do you think that's not maybe purposeful, though, that if people are only watching the sort of unified films, for want of a better description, that is what they're picking up on? You know, it's like, okay, well, they went to see the Avengers, so they're going to come back to see Avengers Age of Ultron, but they might not have come back to see the films in between. I mean, as someone, Isaac, who didn't enjoy the first Avengers film, would you go back to see the second Avengers film, or did it make you go back and look at more of the Phase 2 films?
I didn't see any of them. So yeah, I
you
went
didn't
back
see
to
any of them? Okay, yeah.
No, I went back to see Doctor Strange whenever that came out at the cinema,
Phase
but
3.
after Avengers 1, I was like, not interested in any of them. Though I have seen, I do like Age of Ultron. I mean, that's the better one, but that's having, like, yeah, I started in Phase 3? Is Doctor Strange in Phase 3? Yes, I started in Phase 3 backwards. So, coming on that, and yeah, I prefer Age of Ultron just because it's good. And, yeah, but I wouldn't have gone, oh, the Avengers was pretty disappointing, but now I'm psyched for whatever the next three are, because, yeah, by that point I was so non-interested. It's like, whatever. So, but yeah, imagine, yeah, like you're saying, it is good to have, like, yeah, if people watched Avengers 1 and they come to Avengers 2 wanting that thingy, but, like, it wouldn't be too hard to add in a couple of lines of dialogue, like, oh yeah, I've got me cover identity, and I've, you know, we'll put Bucky on ice for a bit and come back to him later, and we'll just get this problem sorted. That way you deal with both the people who are watching all the films in order, so they're like, okay, we don't have to worry about, you know, the Phase 2 movies are a bit more slotted in, and then the people who just want to see the Avengers again are happy just seeing the Avengers again. So, like, it wouldn't take too much to, like, make a better fit for them all to, you know, join in.
Yeah, and they do address some of these Phase 2 plot lines, such as, you know, when Sam turns up, he's the one looking out for Bucky, and you've got this little thing about Stark is obsessed with protecting Earth, although, again, it seems like he'd nixed that obsession at the end of Iron Man 3, so it does kind of pick it all up, although this was the one with heavy studio interference where Joss Whedon left and then quit Twitter and started crying a lot. And, you know, so,
started crying a lot.
Well, I don't know, I presume so. I mean, I never spoke to him, but, you know, where Disney say, we need Thor in a bath to set up the future films, and and if we don't get Thor in a bath, then you don't get your farmhouse. There was all sorts that sort of stuff going on, and I think the farmhouse stuff is the best part of the film, actually, because I just quite like seeing Hawkeye's home life.
It's true. It's a very strong, because it's about the characters, and by that point, you know, we want to know their inner life and their struggles and stuff. So yeah, like it's definitely one of the stronger parts of the film. Completely agree.
Yeah, and I like how they make fun of Hawkeye, like his lack of
it's because he's a dweeb.
Contribution to the first one, and you know, where Black Widow says, I'm really going to miss him. He brings the team together, or whatever it is.
And constantly tease us with his impending death that doesn't happen as well.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't die, and you know, if Quicksilver's death doesn't mean anything to me because, you know, I don't really care.
We'd only just met him. I mean, you know, he was nice. I liked him. But yeah, like by the point of the Civil War, whenever we see Wanda alone, it's like, well, all right, cool. that's fine.
That's one thing I really applaud Age of Ultron for, because I've always liked Scarlet Witch in the comics. I think she's a really fascinating character, and I think the way Joss Whedon introduced her in this film is pretty fascinating as well. It's the kind of, I like the way that she's shot as if she's a character in a horror film, you know, where she makes those quick sort of unnatural movements at the beginning, and just the way she casts her little spells and things like that. I think she's a really interesting character, and her reaction when Pietro dies, it's quite visceral. And Hawkeye's chat to her about she can choose between, you know, cowering in a bunker or being an Avenger, and she makes that choice. And she only gets more interesting in Civil War, I think, as well, or at least at the beginning of it, where she blames herself for all the...
Yeah, I mean, I think she's very interesting. I don't know that I agree about, like, the kind of twitchy Wanda, like, in Age of Ultron, like, when she's, like, all creepy and stuff. I don't know that at that point she has a well-formed personality. And so they resort to, like, a gimmicky way to present her, which doesn't necessarily reflect who she is. Because by the point of Civil War, where we know her, she's actually, you know, like she's a pretty soft person. And, you know, I don't know that twitchy, creepy version of her, it reflects who she is necessarily. And we don't really see that again.
Well, she's been corrupted by Hydra at that point as well. So there's kind of shedding that and shedding her weird misconceptions about what she's being made to do. Although you don't really see that moment where she definitively decides, I've been lied to for the past few months. But there's that... There is at least that sense that she has to realise that she's being lied to. So you've got that... You know, her motivation is that she doesn't like Stark because she blames him for killing Magneto. I mean, it has to be Magneto, doesn't it? Because... I'm just imagining like Ian McKellen just getting blown up by a Stark shell in this universe, because, you know, her dad still has to be Magneto, even if he's not a mutant.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a nerdy universe thing.
Just a little. Yeah.
And the thing about Quicksilver is we get a better version of Quicksilver like that same year.
It's true.
You know, like, oh, that's a shame.
Very true. Yes.
Yeah. He's just whatever. He done a dodgy Romanian accent.
Oh, terrible accent. Yeah. It's true.
Her accent's a bit better, but I think she's a better actor than...
Well, she's kind of lost the accent now, actually.
Yeah, more or less.
Because in Civil War, she just sounds, you know, American. So, yeah.
Yeah, American with a bit of a twang, though.
Yeah, a tiny foreign twang, but... Yeah. She's not like, you know, like the Russian thing that they have going on at the beginning. Yeah, none of that.
Yeah, I've always liked Scarlet Witch, and I think they do her justice. At least in what we've seen so far. I don't know what they're going to keep doing with her. How close to the comics they'll stick to in terms of her powers and stuff. Her vaguely defined powers, which are vaguely defined in the comic as well. She just does whatever she can do and needs to do for that particular story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultron's a good villain, though. James Spader, what a choice.
I don't know. I didn't know who he was until I saw this film. I had no idea who he was. Everybody was like, oh man, James Spader. I'm like, who? And even after this film, I'm like, who? Like, as a villain, like, I think just because everybody loved the actor, people that had different expectations. They like the voice of Ultron, and that's like what matters the most. But like ultimately, is he a good villain though? Because like, what does he do exactly that's like long lasting, like that has an impact on anyone apart from Wanda, obviously, because her brother's dead. Yeah. You know, like just like, yeah, sure, plot wise there is repercussions because what happens in Sokovia leads to civil war, etc., etc. But I wouldn't say that Ultron as a villain has left any impact on me whatsoever as a viewer. he was just kind of there to be the antagonist for a minute, and that's it.
Yeah, that's maybe true. I quite like his kind of naive, childish way of looking at things, and the way that he interprets his programming as well. Because his aim is to shed his programming, and that's taken away from him when they steal the Vision's body. The Vision is, even as someone that knows the character in the comics, his introduction was poor. Like, what is he? What is he doing? Why is he here? That was not well handled at all.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and he can lift a hammer. Why? I mean, I like that Steve compares him to an elevator, but it's bizarre. But I don't know. Chris, what do you think of Ultron as a villain?
Ultron, I kind of like him and I kind of don't at the same time. I've got mixed things with Ultron. I think it was a really smart way of bringing the character into being, making it sort of Tony's boo-boo, him trying to make things better and integrating this sort of foreign AI and the sort of repercussions. I think the problem is that he sort of goes, I'm going to obliterate the world and take everyone out, but instead of using nuclear arsenals to just wipe everyone out, he goes, I'm going to fly this massive big chunk of a city up in the air and then drop it back down again.
Right.
It's a bit like, I got the hold of the world's nuclear weapons, I'm going to fire them into orbit, but why not just there's bits like that make me go, okay, well, there's smarter plans here, but okay, off you go. And yeah, I think it's all right. It's not my favourite one. I like seeing all the characters interacting, and that's what makes this a good film for me. I don't think the villain is that great. It gives you an introduction for Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. You get Quicksilver all sort of wiped out by the end of this, which I think, as much as it's not as good a Quicksilver as you've had in the X-Men films, I still think it was a bit of a shame to have the character wiped out so quick within this. But when you see where they've taken Scarlet Witch from then I suppose it kind of makes sense. Yeah.
It's weird to kill him off, although it is the only MCU death that is so far stuck.
That's true. So far. So far.
Haven't seen Infinity War yet.
Yeah, let's just go with so far and
and Peggy
leave
Carter,
it there.
She's still dead. She hasn't been brought back yet. Yeah, but, she dies of old age, so it's not exactly tragic. It's a shame, but it's not tragic.
It's not as. I mean, I would like at the end of Infinity War, if it is just Hawkeye standing with a pile of the remains of the rest of the Avengers, and he's the only one that's left standing after everyone slagging him off for all this time. If Hawkeye somehow makes it out of Infinity War.
Turns out Thanos was vulnerable to a specific arrow in a chink in his armor and gets hit by that arrow and dies.
He's got a shield and he can bullets travel too fast. We need something that travels slightly slower than a bullet. Does anyone know a guy? Anyone that's where's Hawkeye? Did we get Hawkeye for the? Oh no, he's not here. Okay, fine.
Cap already threw his shield. It's over there. We can't get it.
Cap's shield is no longer boomerang shaped, so it doesn't work. It's not frisbee shaped anymore, so he can't fling it in the same way.
Yeah, it's lying over there. No one can get to it. But we do have one guy with an arrow.
We do have is the little guy. Bring in the guy with the arrow.
Yeah. No, I would say that Ultron hasn't made a lasting impact on the universe as such, and he probably should have made more of an impact on Stark, who should have maybe been tried as a war criminal after that, after accidentally creating a murderous android that almost wipes out the entire planet.
I think Ultron is lovely and charming for his film, but no one would really be blown away if he came back. And I think that's lots of we sort of mentioned Marvel's problem with villains. I think Ultron is definitely one of the most successful ones because I remember his name. Whereas there's about 10 Marvel films where the villain's just man in suit. I was like, it's and it's always kind of it's just the mate. It's it's Ant-Man's friend or Iron Man's friend or Pepper Potts' friend or something. So at least he's a bit. He has he sort of sticks in your head a little bit after the film, but he's not if he showed up again, no one would be like, oh, it's Ultron. They'll be like, oh yeah, I remember him. He was in the other one. And I'm worried that I'm worried that Thanos is going to be another that sort of, because he's just again he's sort of had a bit more of a build up, but I think we're going to get the same sort of thing. He's just another, charming enough and lovely enough for his like the film that they're in. But I don't think they're going to be the villain to break Marvel's villain, like the villain problem.
I don't agree, because we have had personal connections. He has personal connections to several characters within the MCU now. He raised Gamora, and obviously that's in the trailer. So I'm expecting that to be significant. And he has had interactions with Loki before, presumably, the first Avengers film. So I think that he's going to bring the whole kind of cast of characters together in a way that hasn't been done yet, obviously. And hopefully it's going to work. I'm actually hoping that he will kind of join up the franchise together. So yeah, and I think he can. My main concern with Thanos is actually his looks. I don't like the design. I don't know what that's about. I don't think that he looks right compared to, his comics look. I don't like it. So just putting that out there.
I hope he's good. Like I hope he's really memorable. But at the moment, he just looks like he's just a big dude. He's just an next big dude.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
He can't be another Ultron though. He just can't, because this is the culmination of 10 years of development. He's the guy that's been teased at least twice, and he just. If at the end of it, it's like, I really enjoyed Infinity War, but Thanos was a bit mince, wasn't he? You just can't have that, and the Russos have said that he has the most screen time out of anyone.
Oh.
Which makes sense, because he hasn't done anything yet. I mean, the only thing he's done is he asks Ronan to give him an Infinity Stone, and Ronan says no. It's like, threatening. But he's, he couldn't even take something off a forgettable villain, so far, nothing. There's nothing to him so far, other than people turning around in the cinema and saying, "Who's that?" in the post-credit scene in the Avengers. And you've got people that pretend to know who he is, people that vaguely know who he is, and then people that do know who he is. And
I do like Isaac's point that a lot of the villains turn out to be irked white men who then decide that they're going to descend into villainy instead of sort of taking their frustration out on a pillow. Instead, sort of turn to extreme villainy. It's like, you double-crossed me, and you never sold me that formula. Therefore, I'm going to become a villain. I think, it's.
Then again, that is the realism element. Because all of history through all of time is just irked white men who get annoyed and then don't thrash out with more power than they should have.
You're not going to give me the Pym particle. I'm going to create my own one and then become a villain that wants to take over the world, and I'll sell it to Hydra and I'll be evil.
The villains are always are often quite kind of the opposite of the hero, which is interesting to a point, although kind of boring in itself.
Yeah.
It's, there's nothing to the. I've even forgotten the guy's name, the Yellow Jacket's civilian name. But there is a point where the human side of that disappears, and it's just a fight between two guys in a suit. Which, it's fun in itself. You get to see a giant Thomas the Tank Engine, and, there's city-level destruction playing out in a little girl's bedroom, which is hilarious in itself. But, yeah, the villain's just not strong enough to carry that as well. Darren Cross, that's his name. There we go.
Darren Cross. Oh well, there you go. Off the top of your head, well done. I mean, it's when you narrow it down. You look at you look at the Vulture in Spider-Man: Homecoming, and it's a guy that's peeved that he's not got the contract anymore. The contract's been nicked from him. He's one of the better ones. He's one of the ones that does it more honestly. But at the end, it's the same bit. And then Stark's got a whole list of people that he's managed to peeve off, and he's. From being such a douche in his former days, that he's got a whole list of people that are sitting there waiting to be a villain next to him, ready to kill him. So it's brilliant. I think there's elements of that where you go, oh, this is kind of a bit samey. And once it gets down to the end, you've always got the big CGI face-off towards the end, some of which work more successfully than others. But, you know, I don't know.
Which has like the best villains
Yeah.
since anything is guilty of that.
Yeah.
Where it's just the big CGI canvas at the end. And, you know, I enjoy these as much as the next person. You know, I love seeing war rhinos and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I suppose there is a bit of a formulaic aspect to that final fight. And the Ant-Man one's an interesting one because that's one of the more original end fights.
Yeah,
because
it breaks it, makes it more fun.
Because it's making fun of end fights. It's like, look at all this destruction. It's actually just a toy box. You know,
Yeah,
calm
it's
down.
it's when it zooms out and the scale
Yes.
suddenly becomes, you know, a tiny Thomas the Tank Engine falling over.
Yeah.
is
So good.
you know, is when it breaks it. I mean, your point about how Thanos looks, or Thanos, or whatever we're supposed to be calling him now.
Well, I call him Thanos because it's a Greek word, but that's an aside. I'll
Yeah,
come
there
to
you
it
go.
later.
But you know, the design of him. I mean, we've seen him a few times in films, and I don't know to an extent how much we're seeing some early renderings, how much of it is completely finished, how much of it's getting final glossing over done.
He
So I'm
looks
going to
super
reserve
ropey in
judgment.
Guardians, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm reserving a bit of judgment until I see the film, because you imagine, okay, in the other films, he's only doing maybe 5 minutes, if that, in the film. So they won't be spending tons and tons of money on that when they've got so much other CGI to do. Whereas
I think
this,
his collective screen time's about 5 minutes up.
yeah, well, that's it. You know, it's like, so at this point, you're like, okay, well, they're gonna have to spend a lot on him, and they'll be taking a lot of time to make sure this looks right. So I'll reserve judgment until I see it on the big screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Villain problems are problems, and you know, coming back to this Ant-Man one, but there's that thing that you know, that I couldn't help but notice is so at the start of the film, Darren can't get the shrinking tech right. So what he keeps doing is he keeps turning sheep into goo, and it's like, right, okay, the shrinking tech's not working out. Sell the bloody goo gun, you know, because I'm pretty sure people turning their enemies into easily disposable goo is actually more effective. Does anyone else remember this except me?
I haven't watched the film in some time.
Well, it's, you know, so what happens is, picture this, Thanos comes through the portal, you know, whoever walks up to them with a very small gun, shoots him, he turns into a puddle of goo that is then wiped up with a piece of tissue paper and put in a bin. Job done.
Yeah, the sort of anti-shrinking gun.
All right.
It gets used very effectively on a sheep, a cute little sheep.
Yeah, and then Cross uses it
Oh
on some
yeah,
guy
that's
in the
right.
toilet,
Yes, I
and he
remember it
flushes
now.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I remember it now.
It's like that point you made about Big Hero 6, Isaac, you know, where the microbots have just changed the nature of the world as we know it and no one picks up on it.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Big Hero 6, which is also a Marvel film, but not part of the MCU.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, I feel like that's a cartoon that we'd watch in the MCU though. So you know, so it's like Tarantino's universe, where some of them are films within films and others aren't. Yeah. So yeah, villains not so memorable. Some are better than others. I think Phase 3 is done better by its villains, with the exception of Doctor Strange.
Yes.
You know, the Vulture's really good because you can understand where he's coming from. Ego is very good. Killmonger, excellent. And that's it, isn't it? Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, Phase 3 has been good with its 3 villains that were good. But it's, you know, better than Phase 2 with, you know, Malekith, the Dark Elf, who does nothing. Or Guy Pearce.
Oh yeah.
Or,
Oh yeah, there was that.
yeah. Winter Soldier's good, though. Well, he's an antagonist, but he's good.
Yeah.
You know, he's...
I think it's better, like, I mean, similarly, Killmonger works because he's an antagonist. He works because he could have been the hero.
Except from all the stuff that he does, yeah.
I mean, yeah, like he could have been the hero of the story, though, and he has a
Yeah.
point. And it works so much better when they have a point. You know, like when we can also see the point of the villain, it's like, oh, well, actually, I kind of want him to win too. But he can't because only one can come out of this conflict, you know, unscathed. So I guess, and that conflict within us as viewers, that's what makes it compelling to watch, I think.
Yeah.
That's what makes Killmonger interesting, I think, for sure. The fact that he definitely has a point, especially, relating to nowadays what is happening in the actual real world, non-Marvel.
Yeah.
Very relevant.
Well,
but
Hela's good. I don't know. Well, she has lots of points, but,
Hela, you know what my problem is with Hela? My problem with Hela is that she is not teased about in any of the other Thor films, or it is never mentioned that there was another child.
Yeah.
It is never mentioned that, and I'm not, I'm not saying explicitly mentioned, but I would have loved to see even a teaser, kind of weird hint moment of Asgard not being the goody two-shoes guys that we think they are. The fact that really what they are is colonialists who have bathed the universe in blood. That's such an interesting, awesome moment. And I love that Marvel went there. And of course they could only have gone there with an indigenous person as a director. No white person would have dared go there, but he did. And it's such a great element to add to the story. But what about, I was thinking in the first Thor film, the coronation scene at the very beginning, Odin has a little pause moment where he says, "Thor, my firstborn," and I kept coming back to it after Thor Ragnarok. I kept thinking, man, is that a moment where he goes, well, actually, Hela's my firstborn, but, we don't talk about her because she's been gone for a few thousand years. So, Thor, my firstborn. But it's not enough. And it could very well be, just Anthony Hopkins delivering his line that way. I choose to see it as perhaps a tiny hint, even though I really don't think that they were thinking that far ahead at the time.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, and that's frustrating to me. The fact that there's this whole hidden side to Asgard, and at no point do we even suspect that this could be lying behind the surface until, suddenly we have this big revelation, Hela blows up a ceiling and reveals a different mosaic, which is darker in nature. And it's like, man, couldn't we have had a tiny bit of that backstory kind of weaved in, I don't really feel very, very comfortable with Asgard, or Odin saying something weird, or Odin generally is not very trustworthy as a person because he lies about everything. And he's a terrible parent. So I suppose, we see everything from Thor's point of view.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess. But as a viewer, I am not satisfied with that.
Definitely didn't think that far ahead.
No.
Although my first thought it wasn't my first thought. It was one of my early thoughts when I was watching Ragnarok and you see the mural or the mosaic for the first time, and it's it's a really good job that Dark Elves didn't accidentally uncover that in the last film. They trashed the throne room, didn't they? Everything, it's amazing. And you could have a moment where Odin looks up at the ceiling and he's like, oh, phew.
Thank God for that. I mean, the thing is, obviously they weren't thinking of it back then. I mean, you do get the line from Hela, which I love, is did you not think, where did all this gold come from? Have you never thought, where did all the gold come from?
Glad
Or some
to
of the
have
lines
it,
like
ashamed
that.
of how he got it.
Yeah, it's where did you think this came from? You must have had a hint that it wasn't through good deeds and people paying tribute, I
would say there's a strong hint in the first Thor film, actually, where, Jotunheim is living in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Odin went in and took the casket of ancient winters, and he keeps it in his vault, and it's like, no, these people are right to be pissed at you. There's no... What you did to them is wrong, and... We don't really know why you did it, because all we get is we fought the frost giants.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Not really giant; they're not that big. But when I hear giants, I want 40 feet tall. I don't want 8 feet tall. But yeah, Jotunheim's that. It's just this impoverished realm that Odin leaves like that, and they're just sitting around in squalor, And so there is that hint that Asgard might not be as cracked up to be, although. It's not really focused on as such, other than Loki wants to blow it up.
Yeah. That's true. I do agree. Yeah, that is a bit of a hint. Not extremely strong, but it does make sense, I suppose, with the completed narrative about Asgard
Almost
finding out their
accidentally
darker
makes sense.
past. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, or perhaps not so accidentally. I wouldn't think that it's a pure accident.
I guess Kenneth Branagh wanted to suggest that Asgard was this realm of opulence that didn't, that may not have, well, may have a dark reason for having all that, because you don't find out about the other 7 realms, really, and what they're up to. You see a bit of that in the other one, and, Thor's cutting about just fighting people in them for some reason.
Yeah.
Because they're in chaos. And maybe it is because they see this, the lack of the Bifrost as a reason for them to reclaim what's theirs. Could be. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's one of those bits where you go, yes, it would be nice to have some sort of thing that ties it together. However, at this point, I want to urge any caution in someone going back and deciding, we're just going to add a little bit in the background that does this, or a little bit in the voice where they say that, or a little hint of, don't tweak them, leave them the hell alone. It's simple as that.
If you can come up with something in retrospect that makes sense and ties it together, then that's fine. If something in a later film makes something in an earlier film just makes sense by, that builds on that, then fine. There's elements of that. You've always got the Thor is a different sort of person than Odin is, and that's his reason for not being on the throne, and that's basically his arc in Ragnarok, where he's like, I don't want to be a king like my father was.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm quite happy for them to drop little hints into films for the future.
Yeah.
And even backref from some stuff.
Yeah.
It's especially when this started out, like I said at the beginning, you had no idea that it was going to run the way it did, and neither did they, really. They put in little bits and pieces that were going to pay off later, but not to the extent where now they're looking a good number of years in the future, film-wise.
Yeah.
And you know that they'll be keeping little bits back, and not only that, potentially going out and buying a bit more or getting more deals on the estate that they don't have just now. So they'll be preparing little bits in the background.
And you talk about the growth, and this is kind of it's absorbing everything. It's it's extended out into the TV realm, starting with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which people have mixed opinions on. I've always liked it.
I've liked it, yeah.
Especially later seasons where it starts becoming its own thing, and they stop dropping Thor's name every week. I like parts of I like all that stuff, and the Netflix stuff, I've liked one or two of them. On the whole, I think they're morbid and depressing, and
quite, yeah. They definitely have a very dark tone.
And I think Daredevil, the first season, is outstanding. Daredevil season 2, nah. Jessica Jones season 1, it's all right.
Outstanding, yeah. I really liked it. Yeah.
And Luke Cage, I personally didn't enjoy.
Nah, neither did I. Couldn't get into it.
Iron Fist, I was lukewarm on. Defenders, I liked. Jessica Jones season 2, I thought was trash. So don't watch it if you haven't. If you haven't already watched it, then don't bother. It's not worth watching. Every character is hateful.
Truly, it's just everybody is a ball of just resentment and anger, and at no point does it get better. It's just 13 episodes of from bad to worse.
Grimness,
yeah.
And Chris, we've had many conversations about the Netflix shows and your resistance to them as well.
I really liked the first series of Daredevil. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I've been continually let down ever since, apart from bits of Defenders, which had the same feel to me as the Avengers film, Avengers Assemble, where you're sort of getting characters together and you're going, oh, it's nice seeing them play off each other. But that still doesn't save it from issues. I mean, a lot of the Netflix shows suffer from this middle of the season sludge that just makes you sort of go, oh, come on, just get back to what you're wanting to do. They just sort of get caught up, and it doesn't matter how many episodes they give them. There always seems to be a chain of episodes in the middle where you're like, oh, this is a bit long, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're dragging out this now. It's like they've already fought the mid-level baddie. The big bad is sitting there, and they've just got away, and you're like, oh, great. And then they then they ponder for a couple of episodes, and then they come back. And you can basically apply that template to all of them. And that's a bit disappointing in a way. And
Still haven't seen Punisher.
I still haven't watched Punisher because other people
bad,
have put
actually.
me off. And,
I really liked it. Although it does follow that pattern of, sprawling middle. For sure. I mean, I was surprised with...
Is there episodes after episode 6? Because I don't know anyone else who's watched after episode 6.
Oh gosh, I don't remember how many I've watched now. I thought I finished it.
It just stops after
I think
6.
I finished it.
Once he figures out how to save his sandwich, that's it.
That's it.
That is the first 2 episodes of The Punisher. People keep stealing his lunch. I'm not even joking.
Hey.
Isaac, what are your thoughts on Netflix MCU?
Yeah, like they are very. I think because I got into Marvel reading Ms. Marvel and then on to Captain Marvel. And I think if you get Kamala Khan, her like a Netflix series as the polar opposite of what Netflix are currently making. I mean, like, because they're all kind of grim and sort of depressing and stuff, and like they're a bit of a slog. But if you had someone who was just it's just a bundle of colour and like I think I suppose you can really stretchy. It'd be safer for films. But like a character who's or like Spider-Woman or someone or She-Hulk or someone who's like can make jokes and have fun, and then there doesn't have to be. They can have troubles through the series and stuff, but overall there is a feeling of positivity after them, like as opposed to just sort of like, oh, well, we made it through this week, back to the beer, and wait for the next series to come along. So I think But again, I suppose like other Marvel things are happy, and then Netflix is just the sad stuff. But if you just have like, it's not very well mixed in. It's like, oh yeah, Netflix shows are where all the sort of like the gritty, grainy stories are, and then you have the films which have like like Thor Ragnarok and stuff like that, which are far more fun and happy. But then it means that there's a whole world of just sort of dreary stuff.
And they're almost frightened to reference the rest of the MCU as well. I mean, they reference the Battle of New York as the incident, but like, the Sokovia Accords don't have any bearing on the Netflix shows at all.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, where they really should, because we're dealing with street level vigilantism, and with superpowers involved in some cases. But you shouldn't have you should have more connections than that, and they're just not there. I mean, not that everything needs to be connected, but if you're going to set something in the same universe, you should at least pay lip service to it occasionally.
Yeah, exactly. Something that I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Encountered first with whenever Civil War happened, and the events were not connected, and the Russo brothers said, oh yeah, we're not really paying attention to what's happening on the show, so like, yeah, it's not connected, it's fine. Yeah. It's like, well, when you announced the show, and indeed the way that you've been running the show is that it's connected to everything that's happening.
Yeah, perhaps it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's like the tagline for season 1.
I mean, perhaps like the first kind of iteration was the show reacting to what the films, to the larger events within the films, which is fair enough, like that's okay, and it's kind of cute. But ultimately,
season 1 they break their concept because Soldier gets rid of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, but I think it works really well, though. I think they did really well with it. Yeah. They handle the lack of like a structure and leadership very well, because that becomes the plot. It's like, now what do we do? We're agents of what? Yeah. And that's important. But whenever Civil War happened, and not Civil War, sorry, Agents of Ultron. Agents of Ultron, Age of Ultron, even. Whenever that happens, and the Russo brothers said, "Oh, we're not like following that, we're not really taking into account what's happening on the show. And by that point, they had built up this whole Inhumans arc, which I thought was going to be what Civil War was about. You know, that they were going to bring the Inhumans in instead of the mutants because they didn't have the rights to the X-Men. Yeah. So I thought, great, okay, like that's a way to do it. And then instead they just went, oh yeah, no, never mind. And from that point on, it just left a sour taste in my mouth. You know, it's like you're saying that you have a cinematic universe of which the TV stuff is also a part, but then if you're not willing to incorporate the TV stuff, smaller as it may be, you know, it's not like the movie. And, you know, I'm not saying we should have to watch an entire TV series for the movie to make sense. You can reintroduce to us the elements of the show that are, you know, in question here. That would be fine, I think. Yeah. It's disappointing that they're not actually, you know, holding their own word, you know, like they're not connecting the dots that they said would be connected. So it's like, well, why should I really watch the Netflix stuff if none of this is going to matter? Yeah. You know, it's a catch-22.
But the TV is very much its own little sub-universe now, and even the Netflix stuff, we've got to separate out from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, if there was going to be a tie-in to make this feel like a universe, I would expect those to match up, not as much as the films do. Potentially tying in a side character or a bit character somewhere between S.H.I.E.L.D. and one of the Netflix shows. But we all know the problems with, you know, the way contracts are done, the way TV deals are done, the way rights are managed. All this sort of stuff is very, very tricky. Yeah. But like you say, when S.H.I.E.L.D. first came, it was all connected. It's all going to be tied in. If you want to get the lowdown on what's going on in the films, you've got to watch S.H.I.E.L.D. If you want to know what's going on in S.H.I.E.L.D., you're going to have to watch the films to tie in. And then S.H.I.E.L.D. suffered somewhat because it spent a good few episodes waiting for the films to come out. Yeah. Because it's like, we've got this big arc that we're wanting to do, and it cannot happen before Winter Soldier. Yeah. We've got to wait and wait and wait. And even then, we've got to wait maybe another week to make sure that everyone has caught up and got up to date, and then we can even hint that it's happened, and then we go, you know. Yeah. That was a struggle. And then later on, you know, I think the token bit after 4-2 is the one that I always laugh about, where it was like, oh, there's going to be an exclusive tie-in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in 4-2, and it literally was them picking through rubble in London. Yep. And it was like a, you know, it was a shot that was there for about 2 minutes or something.
Yeah,
them picking
that's
through
why
rubble.
I said it was cute. Yeah, because it was like, oh.
Why are they in London? Yeah, there's no reason for these people to be in London. This could be any S.H.I.E.L.D. team, and it
truly,
it shouldn't be the A S.H.I.E.L.D. team. It should be the B team that are going in and making sure nothing mystical has dropped on the floor. Yeah.
I'm still hoping that Coulson will turn up in one of the films, and you know, that isn't Captain Marvel, of course, and Stark won't be surprised to see him. It's a bit like, yeah, I knew you were alive right away. You know, you expect me not to know that? I've hacked S.H.I.E.L.D.'s files. Of course I know you're alive.
Do you know what? It being kept a secret, I think, would make me happier than them knowing that he's been around. Because otherwise you then go, well, why hasn't there been any other hint up until now?
But he's a public figure. Like, he's top of the most wanted list at the moment, you know.
I know. It's kind of... But at the same time, you're sitting there going, well, if they've not really done any cross between there now, then why do it for a token bit in this? But at the same time, even if you were to do some odd shots or whatever, I think it would give a bit of fan service and tie all these things in.
Some of the forced fan service I found quite funny. It was season 2, I think it was. It was the Age of Ultron tie-ins they did, and it was like, where does Nick Fury get the helicarrier from? It's like, I'm perfectly content with the fact that Nick Fury, if he wants a helicarrier, he can find one. You know. He knows a guy. It turns out the guy he knows is Coulson, who's been keeping it in his basement for the whole time. And it was an actual arc in the season that Coulson is hiding something in the basement. We don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is, between episodes, Age of Ultron happens, and it's like, really glad you kept that thing a secret from us. That really helped us out. You know, and it resolves an arc in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. without resolving it in the show, and it makes no sense. There is a much better tie-in though with the information that the information that gets given to Stark to find the base where the scepter is something that Coulson's team gets a hold of, and they give it to Maria Hill, who gives it to Stark. So that's a nice little tie-in because it doesn't affect anything. You don't need to know either way, but it does connect it, and it's like these little subtle connections that make sense in universe that I much prefer, rather than the shoehorned, let's dig through rubble of an alien spaceship because you saw it in a film that came out last week, and yeah, it's a bit iffy. But the Netflix shows don't bother. You know, you have people wearing Captain America T-shirts occasionally, and that's the big tie-in. You know, and yeah, it's a bit.
Well, they keep mentioning the incident, and you know, well, there were aliens in the sky, so.
So that's why I'm doing this. So okay, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
And it isn't just
sure,
that.
Matt.
Yeah, and there's the perfect. The perfect 8-episode mini arc, The Inhumans. I mean, how great was that, Chris?
Oh, we love The Inhumans, and if you want to hear us talking about that, Craig has diligently put a link to us and all our love for The Inhumans in the show notes.
We paid to see it in IMAX. And then
me too. Yeah.
Why did we pay to see this in IMAX?
You know, I mean, that was my question going in. Whenever I bought my IMAX ticket, I was like, I don't know that this is going to be worth it. Because basically it's a TV pilot, and we all know how TV pilots are most of the time. You know, the what I call pilot syndrome. You know, terrible exposition, clunky dialogue, characters that aren't well introduced. Ultimately, you know, a lukewarm introduction to a new show. Is usually what is the case. And so I went in fully expecting that, and that's what I got. But in IMAX, so like massive screen.
See, what I thought had happened was, because they benched the Inhumans film that was supposed to come out in 2020 or something like that. Mm-hmm. It was like the last one on their roster for a while. And then when they benched that and they decided to do this IMAX TV collaboration, I was like, oh, this will be interesting. So they'll spend a lot of money on the pilot, and they'll give us something like a really action-packed sort of introduction, and what you get 2 hours of... Oh, it's not even 2 hours, it's like 80 minutes of bugger all.
Yeah, you get 80 minutes of a TV pilot that suffers from all the normal issues of TV pilots, but just like on a bigger screen.
Yeah. And they've edited out parts that become important for the show itself, so it convince you to watch it again on television.
Yeah.
It's the problem of we've put the 2 episodes together, and not only that, you're now seeing the flaws on a massive screen where you're used to. And when you go to the cinema, the thing is, you judge stuff as cinema, whether you're watching a TV show, a trailer, a film. It's where you go to see movies, so you judge it like a movie. I'm sitting in the same seat that I would do if I was watching Avengers, if I was watching anything else. So you end up judging it as that, and because your brain tricks you into forgetting that it's TV. So you then sit judging it as a film, and it's not a film. So it all films, and then overall it wasn't very good. It didn't really pay off much in the end for me either. But spoilers for our podcast. But
cinematic experiences go. It was no Doctor Who 50th anniversary. Put it that way. Yeah. But there are other shows. There's Runaways, which I've not watched yet. I started watching it and I haven't gone back to it. I was enjoying it. I just haven't had the time. I do intend to go back to it. I believe that starts on UK television like this week or next week. It's interesting. James Marsters is in it, if anybody likes James Marsters. I think a lot of people do. I do. It's about a bunch of kids that run away from their parents and they have superpowers. At least some of them do.
So it's like, is it this the one that's supposed to be the X-Men?
I suppose.
Sort of.
It's meant to be mutants, isn't it?
Yeah, okay.
I think the Runaways are a collection of mutants and stuff in the comics, yeah, so... Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. There'll be a link to the Wikipedia article in the show notes. Read it yourself. I don't actually know. I haven't read a lot of it. But I think it was the first episode or the first 2 episodes I watched, and it was all right. Okay. Cloak and Dagger, that's on in about 2 months' time. That looks quite interesting. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's young adult teen drama with superpowers. It's like a teen romance thing. They're also on the run. It's set in New Orleans, I think. It looks all right. There's other stuff in the pipeline. There's New Warriors, which has Squirrel Girl in it, not played by Anna Kendrick as everyone wanted, and some other stuff. There's a whole mess of TV stuff, and they're not even pretending like you have to watch this to understand the films. It's just they're just chucking the Marvel label,
and that's good. I would be very resentful if I had to watch a bunch of TV episodes. Nobody has the time to spend watching like what will inevitably be mediocre television compared to the blockbuster films,
or even great television.
Even if it's great television, it's still not going to be Winter Soldier or whatever. It's still just going to be little old agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. running around trying to like solve conspiracies and stuff. And I wouldn't want to have to read a lot of stuff or like watch a lot of TV to understand. It's why like I came into the MCU not having read comic books. I used to read the X-Men. That was about it for Marvel stuff. And Daredevil, I guess, when I was younger. But, I'd never read any of these heroes specifically. So coming into the MCU, I was like, I want these films to make sense to me coming in fresh. And they did. And they brought me in to this new thing, and I have been into it ever since, and it's been a really good time. And it's not, it shouldn't be necessary to have all this prerequisite knowledge to enjoy a film. I suppose now with all these like compilation films, like the team up films, starting with the first Avengers movie, it's, the precarious concept of you need to have seen the previous Phase films to understand who these people are and the story so far, because none of these films there's no previously on the Avengers. You don't get a recap. And so they rely on you having seen the stuff and remembering the stuff and knowing who everybody is. And that can be a bit of a liability. It can be a bit of a problem. Obviously Isaac, has come into this going, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. Goodbye.
Although when you're making billions upon billions of dollars, it's a calculated risk that you can afford to take.
That's true.
You can pretty much assume that,
that's true. You can't please everybody. Yeah. You cannot please everybody, and adding that recap will add another, 10 minutes to your film that perhaps will bore most of the moviegoers. Yeah. This is true. But that being said, the longer the MCU continues, the more risky that becomes. Yeah. Going forward, we have Infinity War coming up very soon, and then the next film, and then if Captain Marvel, etc., is all like a part of another phase, are we going to have another big team up film at the end? Like, what is the plan here? What are you going to do? Like, this is so much. There is a lot of content.
Although they've been moving away from the interconnectivity to a degree, because Doctor Strange is its own film. You don't need to have seen anything to understand Doctor Strange. Black Panther, very much its own film. It takes place in a world that doesn't intersect with the MCU at all at this point. So, you get references to Civil War, as in, T'Challa's dad was killed a week ago. But he was just killed a week ago, that's all you need to know. He's dealing with his father's death. You don't need to know any more than that. So that's entirely standalone, and I think they're going to move towards that a little bit. Although I think Captain Marvel will be more connected than most, because you've got your Nick Furies, you've got your Coulsons, you've got other stuff. S.H.I.E.L.D. will be mentioned, so I think there'll be a bit of toing and froing, and there will always be the films that are more connected than others, and the ones that can just be enjoyed in isolation. Because it is a big enough universe for it not to necessarily need to intersect. The Guardians of the Galaxy films, they can stand on their own.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, they don't need to connect to anything, because they're in a different part of the galaxy, so it doesn't matter.
That is true. Obviously, they are being brought in for Infinity War, etc., so that we'll see how that works. Yeah. I am kind of partial to the idea that they're bringing in like kind of a younger generation to take over. So, starting with Peter Parker, awesome Tom Holland doing a great job. And then, we have Brie Larson coming in soon with Captain Marvel, and all of that. Like the next generation of superheroes will, take the story onwards and perhaps away from everything that has led up to Infinity War. Perhaps, the second Infinity War movie can close this chapter so that then we can continue on. Like, I would like to see the franchise evolve with the times. I think that's the only way for it to keep going.
It's going to have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they cannot continue, with this formula, great as it has been, will be tired at one point. People already are experiencing superhero fatigue, and Disney would definitely not want this to happen, because financially, definitely not worth the risk.
Yeah, well, people
so
say that there's superhero fatigue, but then Black Panther is the third highest grossing film of all time. It's just surpassed Titanic. So
yes, but that's because it's refreshing.
Yeah.
No, it's because it's refreshing, because it's new in a way.
Yeah.
That's why it is at the stage that it is.
I think it will continue as long as they keep making good films. I think that's the key here.
It's good films, good stories, good characters, and like you were saying about Black Panther, doing something with them that we've not seen on screen before, or doing a slant on it that we've not seen on screen before.
Or hiding the formula well, because the formula is still there in Black Panther, but it's hidden.
That's exactly it. I mean, you can do a similar thing, but if you hide it in the background, people don't notice, and they will pay to go and see it, and they will go to pay and see it several times over as well, which is the thing that helps these films bounce up the box office again and keep running for so long. Yeah. I mean, they don't sell the way Black Panther's done with people going and seeing it once. That's people doing repeat viewings.
Yeah.
So you've got to make it worthy of repeats, and then that's what gets your money up. But I do have a feeling that there will come a point where they can't get away with doing the same things again. And also, your issue is that a lot of the characters that people have grown to love and enjoy seeing interacting together on screen are coming up to the end of their contract. Now, maybe they'll renew, maybe they won't renew. But at that point, you break people's habit. If they go, I love Robert Downey Jr. in his films, I love these quips that he does and the bits and things. If he's not in them anymore, then people go, well, it might not be the same. It would have been better if Robert Downey Jr. was in it, or Chris Evans, or Chris Hemsworth, or, one of the many Chrissies that they've hired. Chrissies are awesome in all things. But it's... it's one of these things that once you sort of break the magic formula that they've got at the moment, and like we've said earlier on, the casting has been very on point with a lot of these characters. Once you change that, do people still love the material the same way? Can you plaster over the cracks in the same way as you could before with a bit of charisma from some of these people? And who are your new characters that then step into that for?
Although what you get is in certain films, you get different characters that jump out at people. Shuri, for instance, in Black Panther, everyone loves her, and she's probably tied into some kind of perpetuity clause with Marvel, where she's going to have to do these films until she dies. And so what you've got here is an engaging Tony Stark level of intelligence character who can build all their stuff, and people enjoy seeing. So there's, so I think they've done a good job of building up the kind of the background once again. They've been not replacing it, but they've been kind of...
Oh, they are manoeuvring different characters into position. You are right with that little characters that have popped up are being moved into position to take over, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to judge based on... we don't really know what the outcome of anything is going to be until the end of Infinity War, or even the as yet untitled follow-up. Which apparently the title contains spoilers, so they're not releasing it. So it's
just think, we could be sitting in 20 years thinking, I remember when we had all those superhero films. It was amazing.
Yeah. I think so. Right? It's like the Western times, It's like we're sitting around now going, oh man, remember the Western films in the 50s and the 70s? What a time. I think, in 20 or 30 years, it'll be the days of our youth and superhero movies. Yes.
Yeah. So as a kind of final 2 points, because we've rambled long enough, So we've kind of touched on, do we think the MCU will ever be stopped? Largely, as long as they keep making good films, nah, it'll continue. In some form, it will continue. Whether it be less films or less high-budget films, it will be kept going, I think. So, we covered our introductions to it in the introduction, funnily enough. What are your personal favourites and least favourites? I mean, everybody likes to do that, you know. I'm rewriting my ranking that I wrote a couple of years ago before Age of Ultron, so I've moved things around and added the new films to it, so that'll be published whenever I can be bothered to finish writing it. But just for the purposes of this, I mean, I'll start with my favourite is still Winter Soldier. Well, my favourite is still the first Avengers film, although I do acknowledge that I think Winter Soldier is a better film. I do think that the Avengers is much more important, and it's the one that I revisit more. Least favourite is Iron Man 3, because I hate the twist. Hate the twist. Hate it. But I don't like the first Thor film because it bores me to tears. And I do not like the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh no! Okay, so everything you've said, I'm like, what the hell, Craig? How are we friends?
Deal with it.
I mean, I understand the whole Iron Man 3 thing. I mean, were you much of a reader of the comics at the time?
Yeah, I thought, like, basically the twist of the Mandarin being, like, an actor. It's the equivalent of if you had a Batman villain where the Joker was a clown that was hired by the mob to pretend to be this maniacal force of nature. It's that is the equivalent for me. And could you imagine if that was the twist at the end of The Dark Knight? People would
I wouldn't mind. I personally wouldn't mind. I didn't mind the twist in Iron Man 3. In fact, I counted among the films that I really enjoy in the MCU. That's partly because I am not a comic book reader. But my only experience of the Mandarin was kind of, like peripherally knowing who he was. I enjoy the twist because they took a very dated and racist caricature, and they made it not racist, and that was great. I think that
unless you're from Liverpool,
Croydon.
I mean, Croydon in London, and actually, I think that was bang on for Croydon as a Londoner, not as a Croydoner, but as a Londoner, I can tell you, like, yes, actually, it's perfect. I like the idea that he wasn't some kind of like old Fu Manchu type. Like, let's face it, Mandarin was written like in the 60s, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a very extremely, like, the bits that I have seen offend me. I'm like, I can't believe that this stereotypical nonsense is something that passed for, like, good storytelling at one point. And I cannot believe that, like, such a massive amount of Marvel fans are like, oh man, I didn't like the twist. So what would you want? Would you want, like, an old Chinese man going chin chin chin? Like, it's just unacceptable. Like, the only way to do it was to turn it around on its head.
I actually think the update that was hinted at in the trailers was quite nice. You know, the leader of a terrorist cell who's,
that's racist in a different way. Yeah, and I think we have enough of that right now. Plus, I don't think that we need more anti-Arab sentiment in our blockbuster movies. That's enough, I think. It's best that's why I enjoy.
It would have tied back to the first Iron Man film as well, because the 10 rings were mentioned there. So,
I mean, yes, but the first Iron Man is among my least favorite films in the MCU. I think it's racist and it's dumb in its treatment of the villain. In fact, like, they have him in that cave for God knows how long. He is, like, building a suit for himself. They are watching him the entire time, and at no point is somebody going, hey, he's not building a rocket. He's not building us the thing we told him to build, so, like, what's up? Until the very last minute, at which point he's like, ha-ha, I have made myself a suit, and goodbye. And I just, from that moment on, I couldn't. And it's definitely among my least favorite films in the MCU. And I think it's a terrible introduction for Tony Stark because it's like, oh man, like among a band of like idiots, you were the smart one for like 5 minutes. Wow. Like I don't know. I've only seen Iron Man like twice. And every time I'm just like, nope, can't do it. It's still stupid.
It's one of my favorites. I think it's.
I can't stand it at all. To disagree with you about the first Thor film and to reiterate something I've said in a previous Kneel Before pod, is that I love it because it's Shakespeare in space. I love it because it's about a family relationship gone wrong. I love it because it's about Thor. Shakespeare in the Park, yeah, for sure. In Asgard, yes. I love that it's a fantasy movie for the most of it, and that it was my introduction to the MCU, and I didn't even know it was a Marvel movie. I went in to see it because it was on at the cinema, and I didn't know what to expect. It was one of those like IMAX festivals where they bring back like some kind of old film for like a $5.
Yeah.
And so I was like, great, what's on? I'm going to go see that. And the opening comes on, and there's the Marvel logo. And I was like, oh, it's a comic book movie? Oh, okay, whatever. And then within the first 5 minutes, I was sold. Here was this fantasy world. Here were these, like, kings with their problems and, like, the little brother who's a little bastard, you know. Just, it was great. It ticked all, if you want to. The little brother who's a little mischievous. I have no other word. That's who he is. And yeah, like ultimately the transformation of Thor from like a bumbling buffoon to someone with empathy who, you know, for about 30 seconds has accepted his fate that, you know, he lives on Earth now and he's not a god and he's not going to rule ever. And he's made his peace with it. And, you know, he's the guy who serves Jane Foster and Eric Selvig and Darcy eggs on toast. That's like, and that's forever. That's my favorite scene in perhaps the MCU. It's that quiet moment of Thor going, do you know what? Like, I'm never going home. My dad is dead because of me. And it's all my fault. And I deserve this, and it's okay. I can build a life here. I can help these people. For now, we're just having breakfast. And, like, I don't know. It speaks to me in so many different ways. But that's, you know, I don't know. Because I went into it without knowing what this movie was, without knowing at all any of the Thor story in Marvel whatsoever, I just went in and I saw a fantasy movie with, like, some science at the end. And I thought it was great. I had a really good time. And I watch it very often, actually. It's one of my favorite films. I agree about the Winter Soldier being like one of the best in the MCU in total. I really enjoyed Ant-Man.
I love it.
I don't know if anyone else agrees.
Yeah, no, it's good fun.
No, probably enjoy
Yeah.
it, man.
Yeah, because like I love a good heist movie, and this was a pretty fun heist movie, but like with some extra like zing to it, and it was great. And I really liked Paul Rudd in it. I thought he worked really well, and Corey Stoll is a great antagonist. Yeah, like I just thought it worked really well.
Michael Pena, he's really good in it as well.
Yes, oh, I love him. I love him in anything he does.
I love the little asides where he's just given all this random information just to get to a very simple point. Like, and then I went to speak to this guy, and even the way that's shot with his voice coming out of everyone else's mouth, so it's just so bizarre.
Yes, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's very neatly done.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say like one of my least favorites is, as I said, The Incredible Hulk, because it's the forgettable little cousin, as you said.
I like The Incredible Hulk. I think it's one of the stronger ones. I just think it deserves more than it gets. And they've tried to sort of recanonize it a little bit because you've got General Ross or Secretary
yeah,
Ross
of course,
now.
yeah.
Future Red Hulk guaranteed. But yeah, it's they're even the films I don't like, they're not like bad films. You know, you've got like over in the DC side of things, you've got Suicide Squad, which is a bad film. In almost every measurable sense, it's a bad film. And at least with a Marvel film, you get competence. At the very least, you get competence. And then anything else tends to be kind of personal reaction. So, the first Thor film, it bores me, but I don't think it's a bad film. It's just that I don't like it. Iron Man 3, the twist works for some people, doesn't for me. I don't think it's a terrible film. I actually enjoy quite a bit of it, but it breaks itself in the middle for me, and then it never, it loses me, and that's it. And then Guardians of the Galaxy, it has a style of humour that I'm not comfortable with, I don't like. So any attempt it has to make me laugh annoys me throughout. So it's just not my style of humour.
Oh,
Whereas
too bad.
Weirdly, the second one is. I find the second one quite funny, but I don't understand why, because they're broadly the same in terms of...
They are, aren't they?
Yeah. But I think it's maybe the timing or the delivery in the second one is a little bit more at my taste.
See, the first Guardians is very, very high up my list. I mean, I'm the same as
a lot of people's list. I'm in the minority.
I mean, I'm the same as both of you, where Winter Soldier comes out on top for me just because of the ramifications it had for the rest of the MCU at that point, and I think it was quite an interesting film where, like you said earlier on, I think it was Kat that said it, where it's a film with a bit of political intrigue and everything in it, and superheroes, and that makes it quite a fun film to watch. There's good characters and stuff in it, and it still has a bit of fun with what it's doing. Down the bottom for me is kind of a competition between The Incredible Hulk and Thor 2. I mean, the Incredible Hulk, simply because it is the same, as Kat has said, it's forgettable. I can't remember a lot of it. And part of me goes, okay, well, I'll rewatch it, but is there a point? It's like they recast, they took everything out, they took characters out, and yeah, okay, fine, they've gone token back and they've went, all right, we'll bring in General Ross, let's go do a bit of token service to that original film to prove it's still canon. But apart from that,
Tim Roth is one of the best MCU villains. Fact.
I will go back. At some point, I will go back and I will have a look, but there's a lot more films higher up the list that I would want to rewatch before Infinity War. And also down there for me would be Thor 2.
That is completely disposable. You could just
100%, yes. Completely agreed.
Yeah. It's there probably below Hulk for me. In one of these ones where, okay, fine, there's bits of it that are okay, but overall, it was like a holding pattern movie for everything else coming along behind it. Yeah. It's like I would have rather got to the film after it than watch that one, and I would completely skip over it if I was doing a rewatch of the MCU.
Completely agreed. Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely a placeholder. Like they had to make another Thor film, or they were like, well, I guess we have to fill up the lineup somehow. Let's have another Thor film or something. But, ultimately, it doesn't add anything to the MCU in general. It doesn't really tell us anything more, anything new about the characters we already know. Does it have an effect on what happens in Age of Ultron? Not really. Apart from, I guess they have the Bifrost again. Shrug.
Even that's annoying, because at the end of Thor, it's like, oh, we've lost the Bifrost. This is a really big deal. We're stuck here. Yeah, exactly. We're stuck for a few months until we rebuild it, and then we're fine. And it'll be rebuilt, and it's fine. And
until we plug in the spare.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And even in the Avengers, it's like, so how much dark energy did the All-Father have to conjure to get you here? And it's that it's seen as a problem that it's destroyed, but just rebuild it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. It is completely disposable. I don't mind it. I mean, I don't dislike it. I think it's fine.
I don't hate it. It's very far down my list because of its lack of an impact and the sort of villain and everything in it. It's just kind of one of those, okay, it's there, I suppose, and it's part of this, but...
It's the example of the MCU being competent, isn't it? You always get competence even though it's completely disposable and forgettable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Isaac. It's not, as you said, it's not a bad film, it's just... Yeah.
Isaac, what are your favourites and least favourites?
Yeah, I'm still here.
He hasn't said anything in a while.
Yeah, because I can't talk about, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or anything, because I've not seen any of them. So there's been so going, they'll get back to the films. Toby Slattery into it in Iron Man 3 is the best
Trevor.
Marvel villain.
Trevor Slattery.
Trevor Slattery, because it's every other Marvel film or any superhero film, the villain is like it's a baddie. Whereas like the idea that it's just some actor that they hired it's great. Like no superhero film would like thrown that as an something like, oh, what if the villain is just a hired stooge thing? It's super fun. So I really like that one. Doctor Strange is the best one, I think, because it just looks. It is the best. And
It's the
also,
only one you've seen.
it's the one I saw, and I read the Doctor Strange one. So I was like, finally, I know who this character is. So
Okay.
until Captain Marvel comes out, Doctor Strange is my favourite. There's a lot of them where I can't remember. It's like a big blur, especially like Winter Soldier, Civil War, like Ant-Man. And like I can't remember which film is like which. Like I sort of know the end, like the set pieces. So like Winter Soldier starts off. There's a bit where Toby Jones is in a TV, and then then there's like a helicarrier bit, and the Crossfire's in one of in that one. Is Crossfire? Oh, the guy Crossbones.
Oh
Is
yeah.
he in?
Yeah,
both.
he's in that one. Yeah.
Is in both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of the Marvel films where they're just sort of like, yeah, they're good. That was fun, but I can't remember. Like if you divide them out, I can't remember which is which. There's some films like I hate the. It's like Civil War would have been the best one, but I really hate the airport fight because, like, destroying a capital city airport
Yeah.
is nonsense big. Like if it happened in the real world, like every plane would be down for several months.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? It's like, oh, we're just infighting in amongst the group. Like so for the rest of that film, I was like, they should all be in prison. Like I don't know why this is still a film. Like
Also, there's that whole bit where like Wanda is taking out cars out of the car park and just like throwing them at people. And it's like that's people's property. You're just destroying a bunch of people's cars for some reason.
Yeah. And it's one of those. That was one of those like total like no longer immersed in the film bits. It was like, well, this is just like they've done more damage than anyone like whoever the villain in Civil War is. It's
But it has Spider-Man
Hey,
calling
Barry.
a giant man's face.
It's. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some cool shots in there. However, at the same time, like you say, Vision takes out an entire air traffic control tower just to block their path. It's like an entire tower gets taken down.
I always have a problem with the fact that Vision can sign the Sokovia Accords. It's like, all right, so they consider him a living
It's like
thing.
he's not a person.
He's recognised as a person. When did that happen?
Yeah.
How many court battles did you have to go through? There was an entire episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation that was devoted to is Data a person? And you've got this whole existential debate that they just never have, and that's where the TV is better for that kind of storytelling. But you wouldn't have.
Do you think when he signed it, like if he signed it, the Sokovia Accords, do you think there had to be a bit where you had to get Captain America to tick all the boxes with cars in them? Just like
What?
I like capture. It's like I'm not a robot. He's like, hey Cap, can you just fill in this fill in this bit so we can all go home?
Put down as his first name. Like he's now Trevor Vision. The Vision.
The Vision.
Yeah.
Brian Vision.
I'd love to see a Wes Anderson villain one. After watching Isle of Dogs, like I think Wes Anderson's The Vision film would be the best. Especially, I don't know if anyone's read that. There was a Vision story really recently where he gets a family. It's really really good. But it goes wrong immediately, and it's the most it's the most tragic and amazing thing. But he's sort of like, he's the Vision. He's like, I have saved the world 37 times, or I have, and his family's like, we're all normal. Everything this is what normal families do. Even though, Vision's wife kills someone in the first issue and just hides the body in the house. The rest of it is like, we are a normal family. Everything. This is what happens, and it gets more and more terrified, and kind of terrifying. All the Avengers are something's going on, and he's like, no, everything, we're fine.
No, we're fine.
We're fine, we're good.
We're just doing what everyone else does at home.
Yeah.
They've been watching Desperate Housewives and used that as their model for, functional families. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't... I'll have to do... Did you say it'd be fun to watch someone watch the Thor films in reverse? Because I've only seen Ragnarok. So maybe
No,
I'll have to get
don't
back
do
to
it.
I'll have to watch them in
Ragnarok, it's
reverse.
Watch Ragnarok and watch Thor 1 and completely forget about Thor 2. It doesn't exist.
The rest of us have.
Yeah. Alright, I'll have to watch Thor 1, because that's the fun one. Or like...
We've,
I like it.
we've watched Thor 2, so you don't have to.
Yeah. So I can't say, like, of those two, like, if like they can't be my worst ones because I've not seen them, so kind of, like... out the
Of
thingy.
what you have seen, what's your favourite?
So yeah, Doctor Strange is the best one. Probably Avengers is the worst one. Because it's the one that I remember not liking. And then there's a lot in the middle where it's just like, yep, that was fun. And then... But, yeah, to sort of lump them all together, I'm like, there's lots of them where I can't remember which is which.
I see why you've chosen a villain as your character.
Yeah, because Mads Mikkelsen, who doesn't want to be Mads Mikkelsen?
I don't know. Everyone else who chose characters, I suppose. On this, yeah. Cool. So that's a bit of a not quite comprehensive list of what we all think. Lastly, promise this is the last point, listeners. If you've listened this far, then brilliant. What else?
Finally.
What else would we like to see from the MCU? I mean, it's going to go on for, it's going to outlive us all. So what else would we like to see from it? Got Captain Marvel coming up where there's the Skrulls. Personally, I'm looking forward to the reveal that there's been a Skrull living amongst us this whole time because it's in the 90s. And my theory is that it's Rhodey because he's close enough to the main cast to have, have access to certain information. He's kind of in the background a bit, so you might not suspect him as much. We already know he can change his face. I was waiting for the penny to drop there. So yeah.
So are you creating more headcanon here? Is that what you've done?
The actor was replaced between Iron Man 1 and 2. Don Cheadle was not always Rhodey.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
the Skrulls
yeah.
worked
We
on
all
him.
forget about that one guy. Yes.
Yeah. Terrence Howard, who just complained the entire film, and then complained after the film because he wasn't getting more money than Robert Downey Jr. Apparently, it's not your film, so shut up. Never mind. So that's maybe not something I'd like to see, but there's a theory that I'm putting down now, so that I can say that I was right when it turns out to be right. In terms of what I'd like to see more mashups that are fun. If this Fox deal ever goes through, I want to see Wolverine fight the Hulk, and I want it to be Hugh Jackman's Wolverine fighting the Hulk. I know we're not going to get it, but I can dream. This is speculation corner, so it's fine. When the Fantastic Four come in, I want to see the Thing fight the Hulk. I'd like to see John Hamm as Reed Richards. I want Kelsey Grammer as Doctor Doom. I have lots of dreams for this universe, everything I'd want to see. And with Infinity War, I kind of want the marketing to have lied to us. I quite like that idea because remember in Ragnarok when it shows scenes from the climax where he has two eyes?
Oh yeah.
I feel like they've done that to us in the marketing. They've used CGI to cover certain things up.
I think there'll be things that are covered up, and I think they'll have maybe even switched characters into different scenes that they're maybe not, or cut it in a way so it makes it look like characters are alive at particular moments when they're not, or in action at particular moments when they're not. And
they'll have erased or added stones to the gauntlet to throw us off.
I think that's a definite. I mean, things that I want to see. I'm a bit like you. I'm looking forward to Infinity War. I'm wanting to be sort of surprised, or I'm wanting them to leave me guessing with certain bits. With them buying other properties, I want to see them integrated. I want to see the X-Men and things in, but I want it done in a nice, slow, casual way that doesn't seem like, okay, we've thrown the switch and it now exists in this universe. I would like to see it done gracefully.
Introducing mutants, it's hard now.
That's the thing. It's like going to be very, very difficult for them to try and pull this in, unless they do some sort of doorway to other universes or some wacky way that they can pull things together. I'm sure someone is currently coming up on canon that works. And why not throw in the Fantastic Four as well?
Yes. Isaac, what would you like to see? I know. I already know the answer to this, and I want you to say it.
Oh, I'm not gonna say that one
Say it.
because I want to. Yeah. No, I want to see more weird. Like, have a normal one, but I want to see more weird ones. So yeah, like I said, do like a Wes Anderson Vision, or do a Loki film where the audience don't know what part of the thing is real. Do you want like if the Avengers were back in time, or like have your normal ones, have your like the current thingy ones, but then have like far more experimental ones. And also after the success of like Black Panther and stuff like that, like you can have stuff like get Miss Marvel a movie, like have more like so it's not just sort of the same. Because like Doctor Strange and Iron Man and who's the other one? Oh, Star-Lord. They're all kind of this like they're very sort of the time that's they're all sort of the cocky, the clever, the geniuses or whatever. Then you got people like who else? Trying to think who else you can have. Like Riri Williams, so the new was it Ironheart? You can have more people who they aren't always in superhero films. You're not just like even with like Superman and Batman, they're still basically just the characters from like the 40s and 50s that were still they're still sort of being the main ones. But then you can have Miles Morales, or you can have who's the new Hulk? Is it
Amadeus Cho?
Amadeus Cho. Like you can still have characters that everyone loves, but you can have like a new, and you can have like a sort of new thing of doing them. And well, that's what I want. Yeah. So yeah.
I already know that last thing you want. You have to.
The
say.
last one, the big one that I want, the main one I want is. So we cut to the end of Infinity War. This is the end. This is the Infinity War that I've made. So, Thanos is defeated. And he's done with. I was like, no, and then they go, right. We've got the Infinity Gauntlet. Captain America, you're the most responsible man here. You can take it and we'll put it in a thing or whatever. And he puts it on and he shouts, "Hail Hydra!" And the final Chris Evans movie is the Hydra Cap story, which is it's a really sort of controversial story where it turns out Captain America has always been a fascist and he's just waiting for his opportune moment to turn out to be the ultimate villain.
Why? But I think it's universally recognized that the guy who wrote that storyline is a terrible human being and B, a terrible writer, and that it's a terrible storyline. So what do you think would be added to the narrative with this? Because I think, generally speaking, Marvel has suffered for it.
Oh yeah, they've had to reboot their whole run.
And it was reality being messed with.
Yeah, because everybody hated it, because it's the worst. I have to say that that's a terrible idea, and I would not want this. Thanks.
I'd be happy. I love the Hydra Cap thing. I love the idea of taking such a beloved and trustworthy character and then just spinning him around to be a villain.
In theory, perhaps, but in reality, we live in a very dangerous time where fascism is becoming more and more accepted. And to take a beloved character who has stood for everything that's good and pure and say, oh no, actually, he hates entire groups of people and wants to burn them in massive. It's horrifying. And no, thank you, with big capital letters. No. And I can't, especially not now. Not in the world of Trump's America. We do not need this movie. We did not need this comic book storyline, quite frankly, but it happened. And so I guess the concept of taking the goody two-shoes that everybody thinks they know and turning them around and saying, oh, actually, they've been, having nefarious plans the whole time. It's interesting, but not with this. I don't think so. I think it would be damaging.
It's ultimately meaningless in the comics anyway because it is just someone messing with reality, so it's not real. it's not that Steve Rogers has always been this. It's ever since he's written this is what he is.
They did say at the beginning that, oh no, it's not mind control. It's not, it's none of these things. It's definitely real. And that's what got the worst reaction because, as I said, making Cap a fascist it's against everything that he stands for, against any of the values that he, represents and has represented for the last 70 years, 80 years almost now. And it's important to have like a figure that we can look up to in these dark times where, the fascism is making a comeback. And no.
It ain't going to happen. So you can be fine with that.
Well, I hope so. But yeah, no, I think that I have to just like say something because like proponents of the Hydra Cap theory and the Hydra Cap story and people who like that, like I see where you're coming from a storytelling standpoint, but friend, no.
Yeah, and 3 hours into a podcast, please don't throw that grenade in.
Yeah, like
okay, so
well, you did it.
You may not want Hydra Cap, but what do you want? The Black Widow movie.
I don't want reboots. I do not want reboots or remakes. I don't want another X-Men origin story. I do not want another Fantastic Four origin story. I don't want any of that. If we're going to have the same movies, like we've had these, I don't know how they can take them and make them fresh. I trust that Kevin Feige will find a way. And that he'll pick the right kind of filmmakers who can do it. But I don't want the same. Lord knows we've had 3 Spider-Man reboots. Quite frankly, as much as I've enjoyed the first Amazing Spider-Man movie and indeed Homecoming, I just don't want the same things over and over again. So ultimately, I don't know how they're going to bring these properties into the mix. It will be interesting to see how they do it. I have to agree with Isaac on I would like to see the characters that are new in the comics. Like, I'd love to see like Riri and Miles Morales and, like all the new kids who are like the young Avengers. I'd like to see them maybe make an appearance. Perhaps they can be the new generation of Avengers. That would be fun. I'd like to see the franchise evolve with the times to be entertaining, but also relevant. 'Cause as perhaps it's sad, but I don't think it is. But films do reflect our social attitudes, and they can shape social attitudes. Black Panther has been a great example of taking a very pressing, very prominent, very real issue for a lot of people, bringing it into like an entertainment kind of world. There's superheroes and people with powers and crazy technology, but it has something to say about the world now. And I would love to see more of that. I think that would be amazing. And I think that they can do it. They have so far kind of treaded safe waters where it's not necessarily been about social issues. But again, as I said, we live in dangerous times, ideologically speaking. There's a lot of far-right sentiment. There's a lot of hate in the world. It would be interesting to see the Marvel movies take a stance against it. Somehow. I don't know how. I don't want to tell them what to do. I don't want, I don't want to I hate, speculating about stories and speculating about, what storylines they could do. I don't know what they'll do. I'd like to be surprised. I'd like to sit in a dark room in the cinema and be wowed. That's what I want.
Fair enough. Yeah, so yours is a more abstract desire. I have nerdy things that I want to see.
I mean, I'm not a comic book reader, as I said, so I don't come in with predispositions about what I want, what I want to see. I want to enjoy whatever they make. Hopefully they'll keep making good stuff. So far they have. They haven't let me down apart from, those shining couple of examples. But that's it.
Cool. I think on that note, it's possibly time to end.
Woohoo!
Because I don't know how long this has went on for, but it's went on for a while. So I think we got a good discussion out of it. It's a big universe. It's not easy to condense into one discussion. So we will, or a team of us will pick up with Infinity War. I don't know if it'll be this team or an alternate team or multiple teams like we did with Last Jedi. Who knows? We'll see. Stay tuned. But so I want to thank my avenging team for joining. So thank you, Caecilius.
Yeah.
He remembers who he is. That's great. Thank you, God of Hammers, or Thor.
Another.
Another. And thank you, Master of the Technical IT Nerdy Arts, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
And and he is casting a spell that suggests that he wants to go to his bed. So
Yeah.
So thank you for joining in this extended discussion with 3 superfans and Isaac.
Yay! I'm apathetic.
That's a great band name.
3 superfans and Isaac, yeah. So, thank you very much. So that was our epic discussion of the first Avengers film as well as the wider Marvel Cinematic Universe, spread across 2 parts. My deepest gratitude if you stuck with it for both parts, and a big thank you to YouTuber Dagma for the supplied music. If you like what you heard here, then please do click the subscribe button on iTunes, YouTube, or any major podcasting app, and always make yours Kneel Before Pod. Face front, true believers.